Going forward, I told you that I would share some things that the sheriff has given me permission to. We were expecting at the press conference, before we get to even something more shocking, the Selective Service Card, we were expecting the press to start taking apart our analysis. They didn't. The first shots they came out with was trying to take shots at the sheriff. I was flabbergasted. I had never experienced anything like this. And I want to tell you a quick story about the sheriff. This is the kind of guy, this is why I volunteer my time for him. He called me up a couple weeks before this was going to go, and he goes, "Mike, sheriff." I go, "Yeah, I know." I have his badge that says sheriff on my phone. I know when it's him. He goes, "I want you to know something. I don't want you to lose any sleep over this." He says, "Even if you screw this up, even if you're wrong, I've got your back." That was big. I told him, number one, we can't be wrong. And I also told him I would not quit until this was finished. My team will not quit until this is finished. Part of doing an investigation is the corroboration of evidence. In other words, you have somebody tells you something here, you got to go out and find another source that can confirm that or get close to it or validate it in some fashion. Well, I have about 5 experts that we are using, and they come from different disciplines, different backgrounds. Some are great with electronic files, other are document experts, typesetters. And I'm going to share with you some of the other things that we found on the surface. I've asked Sheriff Arpaio to consider another press conference enabling us to go deeper into what we found, and that's up for his consideration now. Just a little pressure there, boys. The typewriter evidence, the typewritten fonts that you see, a typewriter will always place its fonts equally apart. That doesn't happen on this document. The letter spacing is uneven. The word spacing is uneven on many lines. The line spacing varies 1 to 3 points, being either too long or too short. This information is obtained from a typesetter who, for his lifetime career, was typesetting things as terrible as math books. You have to know what you're doing to typeset a math book. I'm sure I doodled in a couple of his in my day. There is the distinct possibility, and we're looking into it a little further, that the registrar stamp may not have even been done by the official metal embossing stamp that it should have been. The certificate numbers are out of sequence compared to the date numbers issued by the same Department of Health only 3 days later. Federal mandate, it is consecutive numbering. This one isn't. There is the presence of a graphic image feature calling unsharp mask on Obama's certificate of live birth. It's a software feature that's found in Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator. That could be one of the reasons for the white halo, but the white halo really shouldn't be there. There is also a difference in the colors of the text. There's a difference in the letter A on one line compared to the letter A on another. The letter H on one line compared to the letter H on another. Now, I hate to break the bubble of computer geniuses and hackers, but this is old school police work, and this is about ink. And there are people out there that know what they're talking about, and you can't get away with it. The 2 different typewriters, we believe, were utilized in the creation of this document. What that really means in today's language, this is a cut and paste job from 2 different or 3 different birth certificates. This is atrocious. This is beyond amateuristic. I don't even know what you call this. That was good. We have a lot of digging to do. I am entertaining the thought of maybe doing a round table with the experts all in the same room. I cringe about that though, because these people are so ingrained in what they believe, they try to devour each other if somebody comes out and says something else. But I am hoping that we do have an opportunity to go deeper into this document, because if we do, some of it's a little mind-numbing, but when it's done, there is no doubt. We believe, like the sheriff said, there is probable cause to believe that this is a forgery. We are on the hunt to find out who did it, and we have some pretty good ideas. I mean, can you believe you're getting all this for free? I mean, you're getting all this for free. This has got to be a couple 100,000 up to now. You're getting it for free.
Okay, you're serving your country.
It is for my country. You're exactly right.
And we love you for it.
It's for my country. It's for my family. And it's for my children, because this country is changing before my eyes. We'll take some questions later. Just hang on to them a minute. I want to move on to something that came to light that was even more shocking, especially for me, was the Selective Service Card. I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm just going to show you the video, then we'll comment on it, and then we'll take some questions after that. I'm going to ask the sheriff to come back up here to answer some questions. You good with that? I don't know. He's not giving me the happy look. Okay. I'll hear about that on Monday. Can we roll the next video, please?
Was Barack Obama's Selective Service Card really received by the post office on July 29th, 1980? What exactly is the concern with Barack Obama's Selective Service registration? We reviewed multiple Selective Service registration cards. These are just 4 examples. Notice the date stamps on all 4 contain 4 digits for the year-decade marking. This is a copy of the date stamp from Barack Obama's original Selective Service registration card that was made available for public review. These photographs illustrate a standard pica stamp that was used during the 1980s era. The photograph on the upper right shows the pica stamp compartments and stamps that needed to be changed out daily, monthly, and yearly. The picture on the bottom right is an example of a loaded pica stamp. These 5 examples are the expected results from the pica stamp used by the United States Post Office. The 2 examples on the far left are from the same post office where Barack Obama supposedly turned in his Selective Service paperwork. Per the United States Post Office, it is policy to use a stamp that contains 4 digits for the year. The stamp below is Mr. Barack Obama's, and it contains only 2 digits for the year. Why? This photograph shows a pica 2008 year stamp and a pica 80 stamp. Since there are no 1980 pica year stamps available, the 2008 was cut between the 2 zeros and inverted. This inverted cut stamp creates a similar effect, which closely resembles the one seen in Barack Obama's Selective Service registration card. This illustration shows what the 2008 pica stamp looks like when cut in half and then inverted. In conclusion, as you can see by looking at the side-by-side comparison below, there is a clear difference between the authentic stamp shown on the right and Mr. Barack Obama's on the left. Look at the distance between the 0 and the innermost circle of the stamp. Look at the distance to the right of the zero and beneath the zero. The reason the numbers 8 and 0 are out of position on Barack Obama's registration card is because when the numbers 08 were cut away from the year 2008, they were not cut squarely. Or perhaps put another way, the person who cut them cut too close to the zero. So when 08 was turned upside down to become 80 and put back into the pica stamp, it pushed too far to the right. In what is becoming a clear pattern for documents that are essential to the documentation of Obama's life narrative, the Selective Service Card isn't just forged, it's poorly forged.
At least I got a rise out of you. The media wasn't happy. From my perspective, the sheriff couldn't see it because he was seated like he is here. The mouths dropped, the eyes got big, and the flash bulbs started going off, and they started writing in their little pads really fast. No one has made a comment about that card. Now, you go back to 1980, it was under Jimmy Carter, and I know it, I remember it well because I was in a bar drinking when it came out and said, you all got to register for Selective Service. We drank more. Nobody wanted to pull a Vietnam move, nobody wanted to go. You know, they want the haircut. Now what is it going to matter? But then they didn't want the haircut. You were required by law to present yourself in a United States Post Office. Fill out the card, sign it, present identification, and then have it stamped received by the post office. That stamp that you see on that card isn't the stamp of canceled mail. It's the stamp of some clerk saying, I got this card in 1980. Now, we don't think that happened. As a matter of fact, if you start putting some of the pieces together, going to educational history, and we released some information, I think it was seen on WND, about a post office employee who had a conversation with Mr. Obama in the early 90s where he was purported to be a foreign student. We don't believe he would have registered if he was getting financial aid going to college here under a foreign visa. But now it became a problem. Because if you're here getting college aid under a foreign visa, let's see, last I checked, that doesn't make you a citizen. So going forward, that card carries penalties. 5 years in prison for failure to do so. $250,000 fine. But it also says something to the effect that you can't hold public office. Now, let me back up 1 minute. They're probably going to come out and say, but he's elected. Oh, well, you're getting a paycheck. It's public office. He's paid for out of your dollar. So that card to us, from our perspective, that card carries even further significance than the birth certificate. And let me explain to you why we believe that. There is no one in this room that can tell me, including myself, where, when, what time, and to whom I was born at or to. Mere reason is you weren't cognizant of the event. You don't know where you are. Now, that being the case, how does somebody figure this out? Well, you have that little pesky thing called a birth certificate. But in 2000, the Inspector General wrote a second report on the rampant birth certificate fraud problem facing this country. And in the opening paragraphs of that report, he tells you that a birth certificate was merely instituted to record the event of a live birth. It's not to be used as a sole document to determine citizenship or identity. But the problem with a false birth certificate that gets passed off as real is it becomes what's called a breeder document. It breeds from itself legitimate documents: driver's license, social security cards, firearm permits, real estate licenses, passports, social security cards. That was a problem that was identified. And I'm going to borrow, he's left, but I told Tom Valentine I was going to borrow the title of his book, O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly made a video basically challenging this. He didn't have the decency to call up the sheriff and invite him on his television show. He did a video on his own private little video channel. I don't understand how that thing works. And basically, he's hanging his hat on the fact that his people have researched into this birth certificate issue, and because there are newspaper clippings from 1961 showing Barack Obama II being born on that date, that there's a 1,000,000,000 to 1 chance that it isn't him. Therefore, he's taking a newspaper clipping saying that trumps the birth certificate that we just showed you. Oh, really, O'Reilly? I've got a news flash for you. I don't know who does your research, but I hope they do better for your show than they're doing on this issue. Because the fact of the matter is, in Hawaii, in their infinite wisdom, they allow the registrations of foreign-born individuals in that state, and they are issued certificates of live birth. We have over 1,000 of these that are, I believe, are Japanese citizens that document exists. On top of that, we also know that in that registry that he's talking about, there are 2 known, and there's probably more, but 2 known adopted individuals that were breathing 1 to 3 years before they were adopted, and hence when they were adopted, they were issued brand new certificates of live birth. Now, I don't know how you do your math, but that's not working. The newspaper, what they would do, they would go to these offices and every month pick up this registry, the number, it's just a line item registry, pick them up and just print them in the newspaper. They don't tell you a mother and father married, is it a single marriage? They don't tell you where they were born, what hospital they were born in. It's just one line. It was a common practice, especially in the early statehood of Hawaii, for foreigners to register live births in other countries in an attempt to get citizenship here in the United States for that individual. That led us to another problem. Where do we go to find out anything about him? If he wasn't born here, what do we do? So we decided to reach out to airlines. We knew it was Pan Am at the time and TWA to see if we can get passenger manifests for international traffic into Hawaii. Obviously, they're gone, long gone. There's no way to get that. We contacted the National Archives in Washington, asked them the same question. After a number of weeks, they got back to us and they told us that, no, we don't have passenger manifests, but what we do have are microfilm copies of every INS, an immigration card of anybody coming into the country on an international route via air into Hawaii. So on the phone, I kind of started jumping up and down, high-fiving the air, because that's better than a manifest. That's from the government. We asked for copies of those, and we asked for a 10-year span of time. 685 rolls of microfilm were copied on your dime. It's good, though. It's a good use of your money. Obviously, we're a little restricted in our travel due to being a for donation cause, but Jerry Corsi was in that area. And I asked Mr. Corsi if he would go down and inspect the month of August 1961 with particular attention to the weeks preceding or post August 4th, 1961, the purported birth date of the president. Mr. Corsi was down there for about 3 hours and I got a telephone call. I go, "Did you find it?" He goes, "No." I go, "Okay, so what's up?" He says, "Well, I'm going through rolls of film, and when I get to the roll marked August 1st, 1961 to August 10th, 1961, it's missing." I go, "What do you mean it's missing, Jerry?" He's, "Mike, it's just not here, it's blank." And it resumes right on the 10th on the next reel. And they look through they didn't look through all 685 of these, but they looked through a majority of these and they didn't find that occurrence anywhere. We notified the sheriff, wasn't happy. We kept going at them, we asked them for a letter telling us what happened here. We had to push for that letter for a while. They finally sent us a letter, and it's ambiguous. It says, "We don't know, maybe this, but we don't know." They went on a hunt to find it. They couldn't find it. We then asked them for the 2 certified copy rolls. We had them certify those rolls for us. We now have those rolls in evidence. And the sheriff then decided, well, we need to do something about this. So we are going to look deeper into that issue and probably request some further explanation from them. But the sheriff also decided it's time to get some information on the Selective Service Card. So Sheriff Arpaio sent off a letter on his stationery to the Director of Selective Service, informing him that we were conducting an investigation and we would like to work with them if they would help us. Can we please see the original document? We would like to send down some deputies and a forensic document examiner to inspect it. We gave them a 30-day reply. They got back to us in a matter of days, if my memory serves. Basically telling us they didn't think there was anything wrong with that registration card, and that if we thought we had the evidence, you could turn that over to the FBI. I think we need to send the Director of Selective Service, Sheriff Arpaio's books, because he doesn't know who he's talking to. That didn't work. Subsequently, the sheriff has now sent off another letter, and he has asked, again, if you have the card, and if you do, can we see it? I'm sure we'll keep you updated on that response. Looking at everything that we have here today, looking at that Selective Service Card, I mean, that is obvious forgery. That Selective Service Card, I reproduced that in my living room. Through investigation, we got a circa 80 date stamper, the red-handled thing. I had to call a post office supply house and get the Pica 40 stamps that are the government issue. Government mandate, DOD instruction says it has to be a 4-digit year stamp. We had this looked at by retired postal employees, postmaster generals. They all said there's something wrong. To offset that, there's only one way. You cut it wrong. Something that we didn't alert you to in the video, we knew it, we just didn't want to give the media everything at the time. The top of the 8 is severed, and it's severed straight. And it's done for a purpose, because when you turn it back the way it's supposed to be, the belly of the 8 is bigger than the top of the 8. So they had to conceal that fact. There are other issues with the card that we're going to hold close because the sheriff is going to use them if we get stonewalled again. But we're expecting to put forth some other requests from the sheriff to other agencies, and we'll see what happens. I'm not holding my breath. But we continue to go. I also want to let you know that this investigation is multifaceted, and it is now going beyond not only the borders of Arizona, but it is also going international.
Good.
I can stand up here for a couple hours and tell you things, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you only what I can tell you that I can prove. So we're, like I said, we are not going to entertain conjecture or speculation. I will take a couple questions and go from there. Let me just start from right to left and we'll get there. I'll start left to right. Hold on. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. If all this is true, I'm assuming it is, does that not nullify every single document Obama has signed in the entire time he's been in office? Sure does.
I'm not a constitutional attorney, obviously. There's different thoughts on that. Some things were voted for by Congress. You would think on face of it, yes, but I don't know. You know, that's going to be an issue for the powers over there to determine. We're very, very far from that. Go ahead.
Can we access the videos?
Yeah, you can actually get the videos on our website. It's really easy. It's not as complicated as the other one. It's www.mcsoccp.org. mcsoccp.org.
Again.
www.mcsoccp.org. Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, called Case Posse.
Hi, son. Yeah. Dumb question or else way too complex to answer. What is the agenda? These people know that what we're saying is true. Who is protecting Obama? Who's running this whole thing?
We agree with you that there is an agenda. We don't know who's running the whole thing. I will tell you that we did receive information from 3 separate independent sources telling us that major media networks were threatened with criminal investigations, FCC investigations, and some people's safety was threatened. We got information that it was Soros operatives. We're not entirely sure who it was, but we know that there's a major media blackout. And you know there's a major media blackout. Go ahead.
The lady that signed this document couldn't be much more than our age. Could she not be subpoenaed? The lady and the gentleman that signed the 2 documents that you referred to, the birth certificate and the Selective Service Card, they've got to be our age. Can they not be subpoenaed and under oath questioned as to whether or not they signed these documents?
We would have to find that information from them. They would have to provide for us, but it's not even going to just be Selective Service. It's a post office employee.
How about the name on the certificate?
Barack Obama's name?
Yeah, no, her name. The scanner signed.
We would have to get that information from them. They're not cooperating with us right now.
There where you can see it.
Sir, I understand that. We would have to get that information from them. You could hunt down names like that from now to the end of time. I'm not going to know who it is. It's not going to be that. I understand what you're saying, but we have to get that information from them. That person would have to be employed there. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the truth. So sometimes making contact with those people too early on is not the opportune thing to do.
It could have been cut and pasted on there too.
Yeah, it's a big name.
2 quick questions. Did you look into the Social Security card he carries? Because it's supposed to be some dead guy in Connecticut. And second question is, in concocting this thing from scratch, like you say they did, what would have happened if they had started with the green safety paper to begin with?
Let me take the latter question first. The green safety paper, what would have happened is you would not be able to separate the black ink from the green color. You wouldn't get this ghosting effect of solid white. You just couldn't do it. It would bleed into it. We are actually conducting tests now, and we are still coming to the conclusion that it's a cut and paste. We tried it that way. We're trying it as if it was a legitimate document scanned into the computer the way they were trying to say. It still doesn't cut it. You had the other one. Social Security card is still a mystery. It's not something that we're pursuing as diligently at this point. The Social Security number has been flagged by the federal government. In other words, if you run it, they're notified. and the information goes blank. We can't affirm or deny who may have had it beforehand. The one thing we do know, I can't figure out why would a 16-year-old boy who's going to high school, playing on basketball team, travel 3,500 miles to Connecticut with no known place to stay, no relatives over there, never saying he was there, and apply for that card. That just doesn't really fit either. And I want you to understand something. Some of the people that he's associated with, the likes of Bill Ayers, those people are the kings of falsifying identities. You know, he claims he doesn't know, and we have information to the contrary.
Mike, at the press conference in Phoenix, you said that there was a person of interest that was at a computer 20 minutes before it was uploaded to the White House. Was that found at the earliest of your investigation or latter?
The person of interest that I'm referring to is not the person who uploaded it to the video. What I said in the press conference was, I would like to start with the person who pressed the upload button. That would be the last person to handle this file before it went to the world to see. So you would take that information, you'd start with them, and then you just simply start asking questions. Who handed it to you? Who handed it to that person? You start working backwards. And eventually you find the origin, unless it gets stopped by some mysterious, nefarious means. Go ahead, ma'am.
Once you finish your investigation and everything is once you finish the investigation and everything is found to be illegal, what would the next step be as far as proceeding with actually bringing this to light and seeing that he does?
Sheriff Arpaio has asked for a congressional investigation, really wanting to look for a special prosecutor. This is the problem. This normally would go to the federal government to investigate. Do you really going to give it to Eric Holder? No. This is why the sheriff is continuing on the way he's going. We're going to accumulate as much information as we can, and we're going to package it up to pass it off to someone eventually. But he's going to do something rather unique. This is really a little unorthodox in investigation. He's going to keep the public informed. So now the public knows what we hand off, and they're going to want the answers. Two more, and we're going to...
Real quick, is anybody from the Cold Case Posse or Sheriff Joe going to testify on April 16th in Mississippi?
This question has come to me ever since we did our press conference. I've had numerous requests for an affidavit. People that have ballot challenges going on in the country are trying to subpoena the sheriff to go over there and testify to put forth our information. Let me be clear. This is an ongoing investigation, and being as an ongoing investigation, not that I expect it to happen, but you could always come up with a piece of information that all of a sudden wipes out everything you just did. So we're not going to go out and testify to these things if we could help it, because it is ongoing. When it's ongoing, you really can't talk about much. So that answer would be, I hope not. I'm not going to say no, but I hope not. We also don't want to partake in ballot challenges that are underway and possibly jumping on a sinking ship as if they're thinking this is going to be the life preserver. If there's going to be a ballot challenge, it should be done here in this home state of Arizona, starting in America. Her behind you and then you. Just way in the back. Go ahead.
Can't hear.
Thank you, and I commend you for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Are you able to divulge to us on that selective service card the race? Somebody, I had read that it said African American, and I don't believe in 1980 that was a term that was...
I've heard those arguments. It's an argument that we're going to just try to stay away from. We're not pulling in, and I understand what you're asking. We're not going to allow them to pull in a race card. This is not about the race of anybody. This, in the press conference, Sheriff Arpaio made it really clear, this isn't even about the president. We have a fraudulent document. We have a fraud taking place. It is a document we're pursuing, and we want the people that created this document. What happens at that point is different. But this is not a race agenda. It is not against the president. And I can tell you this, and I made it really clear, I am a Republican. If this was a Republican president, I'd be fighting this even harder. Not going to happen.
I recently received some information, and I'd like to verify if it's correct or not. I was told that Sheriff Arpaio, part of his duties is to verify the eligibility of a candidate for the office of president before he can be put on the Arizona ballot. Is that correct or not?
No, sir. One of the most shocking things we discovered, and if we do another press conference, I'll provide that evidence, were two things. Number one, in Arizona, there are no statutory protections stopping anyone from going on a ballot. That's what this initiative is all about. Anybody who pays the money, signs the paper, and just attests to being who they say they are, can get on the ballot to be president. There is no vetting of that candidate by any law enforcement agency. And that actually goes forth across the nation. The vetting process for the President of the United States, and now it's going to come full circle for you, is done by the loyal opposition, and it is done by the media. Now you see why our system is broken. Never in, I know my lifetime, and I'm sure everybody else's, have you seen media so in the bag on one side. So you can't possibly use that. It is not the sheriff's duty to do it. The Secretary of State by statute doesn't have the authority or the ability to do it, so there's a problem. And I'm going to take it one step further for you. We secure documents from the United States Government Employee Services. The question was asked, who vets the presidential candidate or who vets the president? The answer came back, the Constitution, and nobody vets the candidate. There is no FBI, NSA, CIA. The sheriff could add a bunch of letters to those, he knows them all. Nobody does it. However, if you want a job in the federal government to take out the trash, you have to pledge allegiance to the United States of America, and you have to provide so much documentation, you almost don't want the job. You have to provide a valid birth certificate to play Little League. But to be the President of the United States, you're not even really required to do that. So that's why I want to put this in perspective for you. We're a cold case unit. We go back in time. We are not investigating the President of the United States. We are investigating the then candidate, Barack Obama, and the potential to be the future candidate, Barack Obama. So to put this in the right context for you, that birth certificate really doesn't matter about the first go-around election because it wasn't offered up. But it is going to be in 2012. And you could look at some of the events that took place. All of a sudden, you had Donald Trump really pushing for a birth certificate. Yeah. Then all of a sudden, there was a production of a birth certificate. All right, now I'm going to confess to you. You ever cheat in school? Did you ever see little Johnny all of a sudden waving the homework because somebody passed it to him? That's what that press conference reminded me of. Little Billy just handed off the test to little Johnny, and he's going, "Here it is, teacher." And there it is. And I think what they wanted to do was quell this argument going forward. Except within about 30 minutes of that thing being launched on the internet, that the president himself said, "This is proof positive of my birth," people in the citizenry, software people, were going, "Oh my God, this is fake." Within 30 minutes. That's a problem. They have that thing out there. He's attesting to it. That document is now in play, and every representation now is in play going into 2012. Sir?
Can you tell us what the statute of limitations is for fraud and forgery as a federal offense once the crime is discovered?
I don't remember off the top of my head if it's 5 or 7 years on a federal statute. What is it, sir? 7 years? 7 years on a federal statute. However, it's when it's been discovered. Well, as far as I'm concerned, Sheriff Arpaio is the only one who's discovered it because he's the only one who called it what it is. So we got a long time to go. The other thing I want you to keep in mind, during our investigation, we've also learned that the Democratic National Committee are the ones that certify their candidate, and in that certification of nomination paperwork, they omit the constitutional language saying that he meets the constitutional requirements, and they submit this to your Secretary of State. The Republican paperwork that we could track, and we've been back to Clinton era, and we've pulled as much of it as we could, the Republican side still holds the constitutional provision. So you have to ask yourself, why is that? That's one thing if the Secretary of State should do, is demand they be equal and uniformed. Okay? That's one issue there. Go ahead, ma'am.
So that being the the microphone. Thank you. That being the case, is it on? If you can prove conspiracy, then would you be able to go back and actually charge those that omitted that information?
I'm not understanding. Charge who with what?
Well,
on the DNC side?
Yes.
You know, that's a federal matter. That's not something we're going to do. That would be something that the federal government is going to do. There's your answer. You know, sometimes now I wish the sheriff was still a federal law enforcement officer. We could get a lot more done.
Okay. The documents. You know, all modern photography equipment have the ability to put GPS stamps on photographs. If there are any photographs in these documents, were you able to find those GPS stamps indicating where those photographs were taken?
On these documents, there are no photographs.
Did they take a picture of the stamps?
No, it's a photocopy of a card. They just took a photocopy and sent it out under a FOIA request. You know, we do know the metadata. In other words, we do know where the document was. We know the make of the computer that it was sitting in. We know where it was, not so much the physical location, but what computer make and model it was sitting in before it was uploaded. That's as far back as we're able to go. Any more? One more? Right there.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Just in case Eric Holder or Janet Napolitano get this, my name is Joe Biden. They can go after Joe, but I'm a little bit more vulnerable than he is. Your comment earlier about going international, I would hope that you have a chance to look at another birth certificate with his name on it. It actually would be on the African continent if you want to go there. I have a copy, as many of the other Tea Party folks probably do. It actually has his footprint on it.
Let me address that document. I'm glad you brought that up. That document, we know 100% certainty is a forgery.
Okay.
So do me a favor, please stop sending it. I could paper my house with that.
And the only other comment going forward, we are all so angry with all of this. We're all searching for the path forward from this. I might suggest that the best path forward would be to focus our efforts on getting another president elected November 6th. And beginning November 7th, once we have the progression of power in the country established, then we begin discrediting this man as we evacuate him from the office. So in the meantime, get this information out in the public domain as you're doing, Mike. Thank you so much for your team. Thank you, Sheriff Joe. You're the greatest sheriff in America.
Last question right there. It's not so much a question, but the state of Georgia is keeping him off the ballot. And the other thing is, there's a video of Obama when he was running for the Illinois legislature saying he was not born in this country. He was born in Kenya. Now, why that video hasn't gone viral, I don't know. It is on YouTube.
Let me address some of these things. As I made the comment to you folks very early on, please understand, in this day and age, you have to be careful at what you're looking at. You know, I'm almost tempted at some point writing a small little book and giving you a little idea of how to be an investigator, because there's 7 questions you need to answer on everything. Because you don't know what you're seeing. I have seen photographs of Barack Obama where, I mean, it looks like a 3rd grader did the clipping work, and people say, no, here he is as a baby. It's, you know, my wife has 3 kids. I know for a fact the head is like this and the butt's like this. This is the butt's like this, but the head is like this. I wouldn't want to have to deliver that. So I know it's not real. You know, I just know it's not real. So please be careful what you're looking at. Be careful about these documents. Signatures. We do question the validity of signatures on the birth certificate. We think there's problems with that as well. What I would really ask is, please, number 1, support Sheriff Joe, because this is going to be a tougher fight going forward. Number 2, let us do our job. And I think the gentleman had it right. You guys go to work on getting somebody else in there. We're going to keep working. Thank you very much.